What's up, my juice lovers? Charlie Wetlaufer here, second generation owner of Goodnature. In front of me, I've got the Goodnature M1 and Goodnature Hummingbird Pro. I'm gonna be comparing the two, telling you about all the exciting new ways we packed cool technology into Hummingbird. First of all, let's talk about the similarities. They both make amazing cold pressed juice using the Goodnature two-step method where it grinds the produce and then presses slowly using thousands of pounds of force to give you the most amazing juice you can make. The first difference I want to talk about is the size of the press chamber itself. So in other words, how much produce it can hold. You can see the M1 chamber almost fits inside the Hummingbird Pro chamber. So you're going to be able to hold about 30% to 50% more on Hummingbird Pro. And although M1 was designed for made-to-order juice, you can absolutely still do made-to-order juice on Hummingbird Pro. It's just that Hummingbird Pro is specifically designed for bulk juicing, so over a bigger press chamber and you get higher yield. Oh, and I also wanted to grab the Pro XL chamber and show you how much bigger this is compared to the other two. So M1, Hummingbird Pro, Pro XL. Pro XL actually holds about double the amount of produce as Hummingbird Pro, which holds 30 to 50% more as the M1, depending on the recipe. Now we can talk about the grinder. So both Hummingbird and M1 feature the Ready Grind Kit, which all of the grinding components lift right off the machine. So if you're in a hurry and you want to switch recipes, you can just twist one grinder off, put another one on, and not worry about any sort of color or taste transfer from the previous use, which is a really nice feature. And all these parts can go and be washed in your sink. First difference people notice about these two grinders is that the M1 featured a completely circular opening, meaning it's a bit larger, okay? Whereas Hummingbird is like this half moon shape. At first, that may seem like a really big deal, but it's actually not as big deal as you might think, and I'll explain why. So the way M1 and X1 Mini are designed, since they have such a large opening, due to safety certifications and just safety in general, we are required to stop the grinder blade from spinning when you open it. And it won't start again until it's completely closed. So what that means is that all of the items that go into M1 needed to be shorter than the hopper because you have to fit everything in there before you grind. On Hummingbird, we, through lots of R&D testing, have learned that a continuous spinning blade and the design of the Hummingbird blades specifically gives you a much better grind, which leads to higher yield. So in order to do that, we had to reduce the size of the opening. However, since it doesn't stop when it's open, you can fit very long things in it, like carrots and celery and cucumbers cut the long way, can go right in without being cut the short way. So for items like that, you actually do less prep on Hummingbird than on M1. And apples, since you would cut apples in half anyway to use M1, you can still fit a half an apple in Hummingbird. So things like that don't need any extra prep. And for things like pineapples, for Hummingbird, you cut them the long way and make long slices. For M1, you cut them into small chunks. So the larger opening in M1 actually doesn't save time compared to Hummingbird. When you actually get used to it and you start using it, you'll see it actually doesn't slow you down. While we're on the topic of the grinder, we can talk about the blade. So M1 features our herbivore grinder technology that's also on the X1 Mini. That it has a single lopper, is what we call it. And this lopper spins around and takes pieces off the fruit and vegetables. And it works great on a large variety of produce, which is why we invented it, so you don't have to change out any screens or grids or blades or whatever. It just works pretty well on everything. However, over the last 3 years, the engineers have been doing a lot of R&D. We developed an even better blade for that purpose. And this blade has multiple loppers and also little raised teeth on it that work amazingly well on things like root vegetables like carrots and ginger and beets. And the difference is very obvious. If you juice a couple pounds of carrots on M1 versus Hummingbird, put them side by side, you get significantly higher yield, get more juice out of Hummingbird on the same amount of produce. So not only does it hold more produce, you actually get more juice out of that produce. Another new feature on Hummingbird that's new, we don't have any on any of our other machines. It's a new control panel with an integrated display screen, which is really nice because it tells you before you juice if there's a problem, like if you're missing the press chamber or you're missing the hopper. And while you're pressing, it'll give you a countdown timer. There's other features like overflow protection. So if the press starts to overflow, it will actually pause and tell you, press overflow, and you can come back to the machine and you can fix it. Whereas on the M1, it doesn't detect that. So you could, in some situations, like if you put too much in the press, overflow and make a mess on your machine and your counter, which is very frustrating to the operator. And while we're talking about controls, we can talk about the intelligence in Hummingbird. Hummingbird is the first juicer ever made that actually gets live feedback during the process, so it knows exactly what's going on and adjusts itself in real time. For example, as it's pressing, it senses when it's getting up to pressure and it slows down. So instead of needing to stand near the press and operate it like you do on hydraulic machines and move it forward and stop it and move it forward, it does it automatically for you, which allows us to press faster in the beginning and then slow down when it's under pressure and maintain that pressure. Whereas our other equipment, like M1 and X1 Mini, just have a constant pressure. And why that matters is operating a press like that, where you're slowing down when it needs to and getting up the pressure when it needs to, is how you get the highest yield out of your produce. So that's why, another reason why Hummingbird gets so much more yield out of every pound of produce. A couple other features of Hummingbird that just make the process so much more enjoyable is number one, the hopper and the press are clear so you can actually see what's going on the whole time, which just is better. I can't really explain it, but as you're grinding, you see it being ground, you know what's going on in there. As pressing, you can see the press moving, you can see the juice coming out. It just gives you more clarity into the process, which allows you to be more efficient. Another brand new feature on Hummingbird is the integrated recipe bins. So what this recipe bin does is you load up your recipe in it, hanging off the front of the machine. It holds all your produce right there in front of you. It also catches any produce that might fall. So instead of falling on the table or the floor, it just falls back into the bin. These things are really nice and make the process so much more enjoyable. Before I do this, I realize there's a couple of things I forgot to mention about the comparisons here. Mostly with size and weight. So Hummingbird, we were able to make more compact. It's a lot shorter in length and a couple inches shorter in height. It also weighs half as much. M1 weighs about 70 pounds. Hummingbird weighs about 30 for the Pro and 35 for the Pro XL. So we're able to completely re-engineer the internals of the press to take a lot of weight out. And that mostly had to do with moving away from pneumatics, which is what the M1 is. So there's air cylinders in there and air valves and power supplies to handle the pneumatic press. Okay, so I've got 5 pounds of carrots for each machine. You can see in the M1, I cut it up into smaller chunks so it can fit in the hopper. For Hummingbird, I just left at full length. Since there's a continuous spinning blade and it doesn't stop, you just feed them in at full length. So a little bit less prep on things like carrots for Hummingbird. And Hummingbird is purely mechanical, meaning it's driven by high-tech motors and gears to generate the force. So we're able to take a lot of the size and weight out of the components, making the machine a lot easier to lift and move around and lighter weight. Okay, so now I'll juice on the M1 first and then move on to Hummingbird. Also, I'll just mention the M1 is, there's a bit more vibration in the grinder because of the style of the blade, so it does shake more, which is a little bit harder to grind. Okay, so now we're done grinding. See, the press is pretty full here. 2 pounds is about the complete max. It actually started to push back up into the grinder a little bit. Complete maximum amount you can get in an M1 here. All right. So I'll go ahead and press on the M1. While it's pressing, I'll start grinding on the Hummingbird. Okay, so as you can see, the grinding process was a lot faster on Hummingbird. Now I'll just hit press. And we'll just let it press and then we can compare the juice quantity. Okay, so now we have juice from both machines. All right, so I'll pour the M1 here. And I'll pour Hummingbird over here. Okay, so you can see the yield difference there. Again, this was exactly 2 pounds of carrots from the same batch of carrots. Hold on, let me get it in camera here. On the M1, we have about 12 ounces, because that's an 8 line, that's a 16 line, we have about 12. And a Hummingbird, we have 18 ounces of juice. So 50% higher yield off these carrots on Hummingbird than M1. I mean, that's obviously a very huge difference and it'll mean a lot to a juice business, especially if you're making a lot of carrot juice. You also get higher yield on other mixed ingredients as well, but the biggest difference is on root vegetables like carrots. Okay, I decided to do one more recipe here. Here I'm going to be doing a more standard green recipe. So I've got 1 pound apple for both of them, cut them in half. I've got half a pound of cucumber. For M1, we cut into small chunks. For Hummingbird, 1 long slice. I've got 1 extra piece to get up to the half pound there. And then we've got 2 ounces of ginger in both here, okay? And 2 ounces of kale. So 4 ounces plus 1.5 pounds. So we're looking at 1 pound, 12 ounces here. Now again, the reason I'm using less than 2 pounds is because we're running into the capacity of the M1. Whereas on Hummingbird Pro, we could do 2.5 to 3 pounds of this recipe. But to do the accurate comparison, we're just comparing the same weight of each recipe. And also, I just kind of want you to notice the difference. M1, when you turn it on, has kind of a loud fan. It's kind of loud even when it's idle. And also, while it's pressing, you can hear the compressor going. So Hummingbird's a lot more quiet as well. All right, so this is one for M1. I'll do this first. You can see, okay, so when I open the hopper, it slows down. I put my produce in, but then you do have to wait about half a second for it to start back up again, which kind of slows you down a little bit. And now you go. Okay. Get that pressing. Now we'll go over to Hummingbird. Okay, so Hummingbird, the grinder just spins continuously. You just keep feeding things through and you never have to wait for it to start spinning back up again. Go ahead and press. Well, look, I forgot like a 1/4 ounce of ginger in an M1. So to be fair, this might have like, you know, an 1/8 of amount of juice will be missing. So worth noting, so the press time in M1 is set to 2 minutes. Hummingbird set to 4 minutes. So the reason it's so fast on M1 is because the press is smaller. When you use a smaller batch, you can press faster, but also because it was designed for made to order, we thought it was important to be fast. However, a longer press time will give you higher yield. And if you're using a larger batch, you need to use a slower press, which is why we set Hummingbird to 4 minutes. That being said, Hummingbird does have a boost mode, or turbo mode as I like to call it. If you hold down the press button, you can take out half the press time, get it down to 2 minutes as well. So you can press as quickly. However, we recommend always just leaving the 4 minutes unless you really have a reason to go faster. For example, if you're only doing like a half batch of a recipe for made to order, you can hold down boost and then let go and it'll take out about 2 minutes. Or if you're pressing for a second time, you can use boost mode. But if you're doing a full batch, always just leave it on the 4 minutes. There's nothing wrong with going slow. You know, our large industrial clients, they press very, very, very slowly. So they want to get every drop of juice out, and that's what we recommend as well. We will go ahead and pour this in. Here is the M1 juice. And here is the Hummingbird juice. All right, so what we're looking at here, M1, just over the 16-ounce line. And that might be about 17 ounces. It's kind of hard to tell. And then Hummingbird, we're at the 20-ounce line. So that looks like about 3 to 4 extra ounces of juice out of that recipe. Kind of hard to see here. I can pour it into some smaller bottles for a better comparison. So now you can see the difference there. The juice quality is obviously pretty identical. Yield-wise, you can see we get a couple extra ounces of Hummingbird on a mixed green recipe like this with a mix of fibrous and juicy fruits. But then on like root vegetables is where you see the substantial difference. I hope you enjoyed this comparison. If you have any questions or comments, leave it below in the comment section. Be happy to answer. Peace.